All right. So, I mean, I've been doing lives for a while now, and I do them on various topics. But one of the books that I've been reading lately on Kindle, so if you want to pick this up on Kindle, you can. It's called the Magus. It's a complete system of occult philosophy, book one by Francis Barrett, 1801. Now you might, just in case you haven't seen a Kindle before, like when you unlock the Kindle, which I gotta push the button. This is called the Kindle Paperwhite. So, wow, forgot that I turned off the dark mode, which I prefer to read in. It almost looks like real paper, which is pretty wild. And then you like can just click on things. So I'm only, I'm towards the beginning of the book still, about 14% into it. But there's some things that I'm starting to read here, and I thought they were worth talking about. Now, I've had other streams before where I've had discussions around the fact that what people do today for magic and spirituality was kept alive by the Christians, which is why I get kind of annoyed when people attack Christians. So I've also mentioned the fact that I know a lot of Christians, and a lot of the Christians that I know, some of the nicest people I know are in fact are even Christian, because of the way the morals are brought up with them. So I get it. People have had bad, negative interactions with Christians. I have too. But here's the thing. It's the people, not the religion or the spirituality. People are what make things good or bad. And passing along information, I mean, you can learn from anything, right? A wise man can learn from a child. Only a fool needs an ancient text. And just because it's ancient doesn't necessarily mean it's more right or wrong than something you might come up with today. And looking through this book, I find it interesting because it's an example of how even books that are still referenced today, because they are, some of the stuff that's in here is definitely referenced by modern practitioners of the occult arts. And they basically took their own UPG. Francis Barrett, the author, he talks in the beginning here. Let me pull up the online version, right? So pulling up, browser behind me and stuff. So the Magus, right? 1801. And I know my face is kind of in the way, and I get that. So when we flip into here, he starts putting his own interpretation onto a lot of this stuff. And I like to zoom in to make this a little easier to read. But he has stuff about God. He has a lot of stuff about God because he adapts his own interpretation of why magic is basically not evil in his esteem, because basically it's like a gift from God, because God created everything and you're interacting with it. And there's a whole bunch of that type of stuff in this book, which is absolutely wild to me, especially considering the way when I was growing up in the 90s and stuff, when we looked at Llewellyn books, a lot of people, they didn't talk about stuff like that. They talked about paganism, being the only thing in the original, and Christians stole stuff from the pagans, and it seems like the Christians kept the shit alive, otherwise you wouldn't have it today. And I think we need to give credit where credit is due and look at people as people and not categorize them by their religion or their belief systems, considering most of the so-called self-proclaimed pagans of today started out as being some form of Christian. Being Christian is not a bad thing, but people act like it is. And again, I get it. You might have bad interactions, but it's the people you should judge. Individual people, because I find assholes inside the pagan community all the time. Let's see. So with some of these chapters are pretty wild, actually. And if I can spin myself out of the way here. So you'll see like a few things here, like Zoroaster. Now, the interesting thing that I like about Zoroaster and Zoroastrianism is apparently the term magic comes from the Zoroastrian tradition. There's still a Zoroaster church, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. There's still a Zoroaster church, apparently, that exists too today, which is pretty wild. But going through this, I wanted to find this particular section here towards the beginning, and I wanted to specifically call out the part where he's talking about how he basically spent great expense to buy a whole bunch of different books by different authors, which makes me want to go back and look at the original authors, because he's taking those and he's interpreting them and putting them together into a collection, which I believe is supposed to be a 3-volume series, if I remember it correctly. Let me find that section really quick. It's interesting, too, because I think here when he says Cabal, he's talking about Kabbalah, like Jewish mysticism. C-A-B-A-L, but I could be wrong on that. In fact, I might have to do a search and verify if I'm wrong or right with that particular thing. Cabal. Cabal is a group of people who are united in a close design, usually. So maybe it's not. Maybe that's not what he's referring to. I like looking things up, you know, learning from stuff and looking things up. Dusty Dud, man, you join almost every one of these lives. Thank you for your support. I enjoyed your earlier video, very informative. Your channel has helped me get away from this right or wrong view with spirituality. Good. I'm glad it has inspired you. I'm not trying to convince people to not do stuff. I'm trying to convince people to think. Just take a moment and think before you make decisions. Don't repeat stuff. Don't regurgitate. I can't stand regurgitation, and I can't stand dictation. Don't dictate to others. Don't regurgitate. Just think for a minute. And if you're going to get into something, find out where it came from. Get a little bit of its background. That's all I'm trying to accomplish with this. And I want to empower people that are new to paths, especially the reconstruction, or reconstruction is all I can call it. Reconstruction or modern invention of the New Age paths. They're very popular, and I really hope people take the time to really understand them instead of just, again, regurgitating nonsense. I don't know how to say it. That's what it is regurgitation. But cool. Thank you for that. I appreciate that feedback. Let's see. Yeah, see, over here on going down too far on the page, trying to scroll in this top section. So over here behind my head again, I gotta guess gotta go this way. There's a section right about here. And all which we publicly declare to the world for the honor of our God, being at all times ready to do every kindness we can to our poor neighbor, and as far as in us lies to comfort him, sick or afflicted, in doing which we ask no reward. It is sufficient to us that we can do it, and that we may be acceptable to him who says, I am the light of the world, to whom with the Father and Holy Spirit be ascribed all power, might, majesty, and dominion. Amen. There's a lot of religious undertones in here, and it's 100% Francis Barrett. Like, I mean, he even makes references that he's taken these other books, but he's putting his own view on it. So again, taking it and applying it, it's kind of what people do. I wonder if it was under natural magic section. Now I feel like I might need to double check my Kindle and see if I actually highlighted it. One of the cool things about Kindle, actually, you know what? I'll take my Fire tablet. And I think it's easier to see on my Fire tablet with the highlights. 8-1. No, come on. That's a game. That's another game. Here we go. So the Magus. 28%, of course, but that's fine. All right, so let's boot up into the Magus. Come on, load the book. Okay, so we should have the notes section that I can apply to. If I swipe down. Nope, that's leaving it altogether. Is it this section here? Trying to remember how to work my thing. Ah, I tap it. That's what it was. Is this my annotations? Yes. So there's a section here where you can kind of create all of these different annotations. And a couple of these I wanted to go back and look at, including some quotes from the Bible, because I found them very interesting, because they seem to contradict. So let me go up to my notes here. Let me find the note that I'm looking for. This is... Okay, so this location is 155, Zoroaster, Hermes, Simon of the Temple, Agrippa, Porta. This is the one I'm looking for. So if I go to this section, all right, let me read this section for you here. So it's on, I don't remember what page this is on, but this is the section I wanted to refer to. So again, we're talking about Zoroaster, right? Yeah, LOL, my weekends have been pretty free, and I enjoy this stuff and always learning. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to fill up my weekends. I've been actually playing a lot more D&D lately, but I've also been trying to read when I can. I don't have a lot of time for reading. I play too many games. Zoroaster, Hermes, Apollonius, Simon of the Temple, Trididemus. Agrippa, Porta, the Napoleon, Dee, talking about John Dee. This was a magician, a court magician in England. I want to find his book so bad. Paracelsus, Roger Bacon, and a great many others, to which we have subjoined our own notes, endeavoring to put out the difference of these arts, so as to free the name of magic from any scandalous imputation, seeing it as a word originally significant not of any evil, but of every good and laudable science, such as a man might profit by and become wise and happy, and the practice so far from being offensive to God or man, that the very root or ground of all magic takes its rise from the Holy Scriptures. The fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom, and charity is the end, which fear of God is the beginning of magic. For magic is wisdom, and on this account the wise men were called magi, or magi. The magicians were the first Christians, for by their high and excellent knowledge they knew that Savior which was promised was now born man, that Christ was our Redeemer, advocate, and mediator. They were the first to acknowledge his glory and majesty. Therefore no one be offended at the venerable and sacred title of magician. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. That's straight up wild. That does not match with the way that you would expect to see a lot of modern individuals. And actually, I probably could do a keyword search for that to find that section. I know it's in the book behind me somewhere. Damn it, where did I leave off? That's the one problem with going up to past notes. I think it was around here. Less of the anticipating. Astrology and the most speculation seeking out the light. I might just have to reread a couple sections of this book because I don't know where I left off now that I swiped through. I know I've been taking a lot of notes and highlighting things, and that's one reason why I kind of like to use the Kindle app. Advertisement! Amazon, pay me money as I get you new Kindle subscribers. But I think a lot of folks have tried to peel out Christian aspects, or pagan aspects in this case, of some of the original writings of things. You know, this person, Francis Barrett, is referring to the first magicians as being Christians. Were the first magicians Christians? Were the first magicians something else? And Christians just so happen to also be magicians as well. I'd actually remember reading somewhere before, and this is hearsay, I don't have a source for you this time, but I remember reading about how the Christians were commanded to burn their spell books and get rid of their magics in one time or another, based upon what the church wanted them to do, because they wanted them to relinquish their power. I mean, you have different type of actual spells within Christianity, such as things like, exorcism. Exorcism is 100% a spell. Blaze, were you ever into Mortal Kombat games? Just curious. Absolutely. I used to love Mortal Kombat games. When I first started playing, Scorpion was my favorite. And then I liked Raiden and Liu Kang. And then Liu Kang was my favorite, and pretty much stayed my favorite. And I played the original Mortal Kombat when you had to type in the blood code. And then I started playing the other Mortal Kombats. I played quite a few of them. I actually bought one recently on Steam and tried to play it again. It just doesn't feel the same as the old classic ones did. But yes, I do like Mortal Kombat. Good game. Definitely don't think I got to chapter 2, so this has got to be earlier up here that I was referring to. Oh, it's in the preface. Preface, whatever you want to call it. It's in the preface right here. So this is what I was looking for. Alright, so let me zoom this up just a hair. I will zoom in on this section so we can talk about what I was reading earlier. So you can see the names if you want to see it. Obviously, if you can get a copy of the book, that works too. Let me see, I need to turn this way to get out of the way. Let's look at this section in here. That's what we're going to look at. I don't know how else to get myself out of the way unless I can move my... There we go. I'll just move myself like that so you can kind of see it in the background, and I'll try to zoom in a little bit more. The new one is coming out this month. Yeah, I heard Mortal Kombat 1 where they're doing kind of a system, a world reboot. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, it's kind of cool they're trying to breathe life back into it, but I got mixed feelings. But it definitely does look like it's got some good graphics. So, likewise, we have the second line there. Likewise, we have recited the various methods used by the ancients for the invocation of astral spirits by circles, crystals, etc. Their forms of exorcism, incantation, orination, bonds, conjurations, and have given a general display of the instruments of their art, all of which we have collected out of the works of the most famous magicians, such as, and then that's the other part I read. So there's Zoroaster, Hermes, Apollonius, if I'm reading that right, Simon of the Temple, Trithemius, Agrippa, Porta, D, that's John D that he's talking about there, Paracelsus, Roger Bacon, and a great many others. So this is what I was talking about. And he's very, very clearly referencing this and tying this all together with God, including that next part, which I was talking about, which, let's pull me over to the side yet again. So being, far from being offensive to God or man, that the very root or ground of all magic takes its rise from the Holy Scriptures. And we see the Magi, the wise men, in the Bible. So this is one of those books where it's like, so it's a Christian trying to tie into some spell work, which predates Christianity, even though they're talking about the magicians were the first Christians. Oh, okay, maybe that's the way he meant it. Instead of Christians were the first magicians ever, magicians became the first Christians because they worked with these magics and they saw Christianity and its wisdom and joined it for higher knowledge, which, I mean, that would kind of make sense. I mean, if you think about it, back in the day with the churches having all the knowledge, wisdom, and teachings in schools, drawing into or pulling people into that of where you want to learn wisdom, and they're always having that as an underlining thing with the way that they viewed God back then, kind of makes sense that they would try to tie those things together. But definitely want to do some more readings on some of this stuff. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? Let me zoom out just a little bit here. When I'm going through these chapters, that's John. That's not John D. That's Francis Barrett, by the way. There's a picture of him over there on the far side. But I think one of the other interesting things, as you're going through some of the stuff here in the chapters, I guarantee that we are going to find some stuff, right above my head. I guess, let me see. I need to readjust my screen, apparently. If I transform again, edit my transformation, and I guess that's the left cropping, so I can just hit like that. Does that fix it? No, it does not. Transform, edit transformation. Let's move to the other side. Oh, I see what it was, because it's still cutting off because of how big it is, so I'd have to go like this. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. So right above my head here, let me scroll down just a hair. Chapter 3, look at that right there. Chapter 3, Amulets, Charms, and Enchantments. And I'm willing to bet, and I haven't really dug through the book yet, but I bet you that they list things in this book from the 1800s that were used in modern-day Reconstruction neo-paganism. Even though the author of this book is 100% a Christian, I bet you that they've applied and adapted these things into the modern neo-pagan movement. And we could probably go a little bit back further. I bet you John Dee's book is a little bit older than this one. This is only 1801, and I bet you we can find some stuff in there too. So we can bounce around a little bit, but looking at some of these things, this is why I want to read this book. I mean, there's some very, very interesting of the 4 elements and their natural qualities right there. Properties of the wonderful nature of fire and earth, of water and air. So I definitely want to jump to page 63. Let me jump to 31 first. Let's go to 31. and then we'll go to 63. I haven't read this far yet. This is just kind of briefly glancing over it. Is this page 31? Of course, the pages don't have numbers on them. Here we go. Chapter 3. So I had to get to page 32. The instrument of enchanters is a pure, living, breathing spirit of the blood, whereby we bind or attract those things which we desire or delight in, so that by an earnest intention of the mind we take possession of the faculties in a no less potent manner than strong wines beguile the reason and senses of those who drink them. Therefore, to charm is either to bind with words, in which there is great virtue, as the poet sings, words thrice she spake, which caused at will sweet sleep, appeasest the troubled waves and roaring deep. Words thrice she spake. Speak thy words in three. Kind of sounds like the Wiccan read there. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching or grasping for straws here. Indeed, the virtue of man's words are so great that when pronounced with a fervent consistency of mind, they are able to subvert nature, to cause earthquakes, storms, and tempests. And this is not the first time I've read about stuff like this. This is probably one of the oldest references to it. But the idea and concept over words being powerful and speaking your words being part of the magic, incantation, chanting. If you look at Norse paganism, or the Reconstruction Norse paganism, they talk about Gelder, which is using the voice and speaking. If you look at The Lord of the Rings, which is a fictional thing, written obviously by J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien. I think it's Tolkien is how it's pronounced. But anyway, The Lord of the Rings, which is fictional, I mean, he based a lot of his stuff on some of the Scandinavian things, and the way that he writes the wizards is their voice is what had the power. They spoke their spells. And it's interesting that there's references to that here in this book as well, talking about using charms is not necessarily a physical thing, but speaking them. So again, now we're tying this into practices that are used in other type of neo-pagan practices. Now, this is interesting because you might say, well, yeah, but he even, we just talked about in this particular live that I'm talking about the fact that Francis Baird is taking this stuff from other sources and then putting his Christianity into it because that's his worldview. So you might say, well, it's clearly that it's from a pagan source and it's being converted. It's still Christians that are keeping this alive for you, though, and you have it today because of Francis, who is clearly a Christian. So I'm not trying to dismiss that there were older sources than Christians and that things couldn't have survived if the Christians hadn't destroyed it back in the day. The older Christians basically destroying anything that wasn't Christian. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to get at here is that you should respect people for being people. We had knowledgeable people who wrote stuff down, and even though we have underlining tones of Christianity, at the end of the day, if you take the names and words that you use for the spirituality out and look at the core of what they're doing, you're talking about some sort of great creative force, some sort of primal force that does creation. And if you want to view that as like the great spirit or the divine and divinity, or if you want to view that as the gods, it could still fit with the context, in my opinion. And Dusty Dead, it's not like we can't talk about Mortal Kombat. I just was focused on the Magus for now. So feel free to continue to chat or ask questions or mention what you like about it. I wasn't trying to dismiss you, by the way. Indeed, the virtues of man's word. Yeah, so we read that. Storms and tempest. I have in the country, by only speaking a few words and used some other things, caused terrible rains and claps of thunder. Now, in this case, he's making the claim, but there's no evidence of that being possible. Almost all charms are impotent without words, because words are the speech of the speaker, and the image of the thing signified or spoken of. Therefore, whatever wonderful effect is intended, let the same be performed with the addition of words significant of the will or desire of the operator. For words are a kind of occult vehicle of the image, conceived or begotten, and set out of the body by the soul. Therefore, all the forcible powers of the spirit ought to be breathed out with vehemency. and an arduous and intent desire, and I know how to speak and convey words together, so as they may be carried onwards on the on the hearer at a vast distance, no other body intervening, which thing I have done often. Words are also oftentimes delivered to us seemingly by others in our sleep, whereby we seem to talk and converse. But no vocal conversations are of any effect except they proceed from spiritual and occult causes. Such spirits have often manifested singular things to me. So, see, I don't know if there's really much here that it talks about how to actually use the charms, more of like just information about it. Let the party who pronounces these words hold the hands together. So, what is this here? However to lose, which I will set here. I will here set down while speaking of these things a very powerful amulet for the stopping immediately. So here he's actually giving a spell. Blaze, have you watched the vid on Yahweh by Estorica or the Krenkenford video about the earliest deities with Lion Man God? Was just wondering. I started his videos are very long, and I kind of lost interest after a while. It's nothing against him. It's just the presentation. I wasn't able to get through the whole thing, but I started watching it. It was interesting. I mean, he doesn't have bad information, but it's just something I wasn't able to really sit through the whole thing of. But I appreciate you mentioning it all the same. I always like to at least consider other things. However, not to lose time, we proceed. There are various enchantments which I have provided relative to common occurrences of life, a kind of binding to the effect that which we desire as to love or hatred, or to those things we love or against those things we hate, in all which there is a magical symphony above the power of reasoning. Therefore, those abstract matters we feel are conceived of and reflect upon, and draw them into our use. I will here set down, while speaking of these things, a very powerful amulet for the stopping immediately a bloody flux, for which with a faith I dare lay down my life for the success and entire cure. So apparently this is how they cure the flux. In the blood of Adam arose death, in the blood of Christ death is extinguished. In the same blood of Christ I command thee, O blood, that thou stop fluxing. And I've read many occult books, modern books, and I can't think of an exact reference, but I remember reading, and it's probably somewhere over there, I remember reading about when you speak, you have to speak with authority and mean it. So this kind of goes along with that, and it kind of goes back to the idea that maybe words aren't as important as the intent behind them. Words are just noise and sound, but if you think about the way that you speak words, like if you say to someone, stop, or if you say, stop, or if you say, stop, the intent you put behind the exact same word will have a different effect and impact. And if there is to be believed that there is a vibrational quality to words, by putting the intent behind the words you're speaking, me reading them like that probably does absolutely nothing. But reading them with intent probably is what's more important. I don't think the words themselves are as important. Vibration of the word. Yes, exactly, Callie. And welcome to the stream. That's the way I look at it. And like I said, that's based upon reading different occult theories on books, from the New Age type of movement. So that's one of the things I want to do here is kind of analyze and compare this. So what I was reading is on that far page over there. Hi and thanks. Yeah, absolutely. In this one godly superstition, there will be found a ready, cheap, easy remedy for that dreadful disorder, the bloody flux. I can't talk. Whereby a poor, miserable wretch will reap more real benefit than in a whole shop of an apothecary's drugs. And I know that we talk about stuff often about, like, you know, if things are working, you know, it's kind of like the fake pill. What do they call it? Where people will be given real medicine and some people will be given a sugar pill. And the sugar pill is referred to something, and people basically get better because they think they're getting better. Which, in a way, isn't that a way kind of effective? Because if they can do it with their own mind and that's what they needed to get past, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that still working? What do they call that? The older I get, the more I start slipping. Placebo. Yes, thank you. Placebo effect. Yeah. So it might be working like a placebo, but again, if you're getting the intent and if you're speaking with intent, I feel like whatever's inside of you, that vibrational quality that's inside of us, if you speak that with meaning, regardless of the words you say, even if it's garbly-gook, it will still work because that intent, that vibrational quality being projected from your voice is what makes the magic possible. That's my theory, at least. It's cool. Yeah, I had to stop watching Krenkin Ford video halfway and watch second half the next day. His are kind of long and his accent is kind of thick. Right, and that's all I meant. Like, he doesn't have bad videos. It's just, it was hard to sit through. Placebo can cause one to create the vibration. I agree. Completely agree with you, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, is placebo effect is still an effect. It's still working. So even though it's not the drug itself working, to me, if anything, it kind of reiterates the power of the mind and the vibrational quality of magic. These 4 letters are a powerful charm or amulet. Wait, what part did I miss here? Whereby a poor miserable wretch will reap real benefit than in a whole shop of apothecaries' drugs. These 4 letters are a powerful charm or amulet against the common og. Likewise, let them be written upon a piece of clean and new vellum at any time of day or night. Now, see, here's the thing. They're talking about how to write it down and where to write it. But why is it important to be on vellum? Why does it need to be written down? Why is it not speaking in this case? Now, he also says on the other page right above me, because I'm reading that far page way over there. Maybe I should be funny with my video. So I'm reading this page, but over here on this page, move my camera around. He was talking about the importance of speaking. So he said it needs to be written on vellum, and it can be any time of day or night, and they will be found a speedy and certain cure and much more effectiveness than the word abracadabra. Now, abracadabra has a very interesting way. Apparently, there's a way of writing it, and you take off one letter, and it makes a pyramid. So there's an A at the bottom, but it forms the word abracadabra, and apparently, writing that word out, abracadabra, has some significant, powerful meaning to it, and I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but I know it's in another old magic book. I just don't remember what book it comes from. Focused intention, yes, caused by writing it down. Good point, because you're keeping your intent on it. So by manifesting it and writing it out, you're putting that intent out and you're storing it in written form. So as long as you infuse it properly and speak it, that would make sense. Concentrated vibration, that would make sense to me. However, as that ancient charm is still amongst some who pretend to cure ogs in some repute, I will here set down the form and manner of its written. Likewise, it must be pronounced or spoken in the same order as it is written, with the intent or will of the operator declared at the same time of making it. Yeah, there's that abracadabra triangle. When I saw it, though, I saw it as an actual triangle and not just sliding off to the side. The A's weren't parallel. It was an actual pyramid shape with the way they wrote the word. And see, it seems like this cut off. It seems like it was talking about one part and then it jumps to another. Because now we're talking about of unshuns, filters, potions, and their magical virtues. Yeah, where's the part where he wrote this down? Did they cut that out? I feel like it left out a part of the magic. That's interesting. All right, let's jump forward to that 63 part that I was talking about. I think it was in the 60s, wasn't it? Might have to go back to the index. That's really cool. Yeah. I like it. I do. Why is Agrippa still highlighted? I thought I unsearched for that. Yeah, I unsearched for that. That's kind of weird. 63. Of the 4 elements and their natural qualities. This is the next section I was going to look for, because I bet you we'll find some things here that are used in modern neopaths. But interestingly enough, so there's a book that I have a PDF of, and it is called Initiation in the Hermetics, I think it is. And it's by I'm just going to have to look it up, ain't I? I don't think I have it on my desktop. No, I don't. Book shortcuts. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Introduction to Hermetics. And it is by a Czech author, I believe. Franz Barden. Initiation into Hermetics, a course of instruction of magic theory and practice, which we can do a live on in the future. But this book here specifies the elements and the principles of the elements. And I think we could zoom in a little bit here. So, the principles of the elements. And they're basically... So what page is this on again? This is towards the beginning, so we don't have to go too deep into the book as it's towards the beginning. But basically, it is based upon Hinduism, Indian magic. Now, Kabbalistic, that's Jewish mysticism. But they mention the Tatwas here. Yeah, Tatwas. I don't know how to pronounce that. And this here, Akasha, so if you've heard Akasha for the fifth element, it's out of this book here. And that's based upon Indian magic. So according to the Indian succession of the Tatwas. So we're talking about Hinduism and stuff, right? And there's words. So if you use Akasha for ether or spirit, these are the actual words that you would use for fire, air, water, and earth. But a lot of people don't know this, and they haven't seen this before. That's really cool. No problem. I was just wondering if you liked MK, because you said you like martial arts. I like martial arts too, and I've always been a fan of MK. Yes, I am. And no problem. You're always... This is supposed to be a free and open discussion, so even though the live will go up later and people will be able to rewatch it, I don't care. Talk about whatever you want. If you have questions, you want to chat, go for it. That's a cool book. Have you read this one before, Callie? If not, I definitely recommend it. It's definitely a neat book. But I agree. And it breaks down some really cool information on the elements. But anyway, today they were talking about the Magus. When was initiation into Hermetics? Franz Barden. I want to know when it was written. I think Franz Barden was a more recent one. Introduction to Hermetics was written in 1962. So this was written much later, because this book, the Magus, that we're looking at right now, was written by Francis Barrett in 1801. So this is a much older book that we're looking at currently. Yes, awesome. All right, of the four elements and their natural qualities, basically I'm just trying to see if there's anything that stands out as being relating to Hinduism or anything else, because I'm kind of curious where they get these elements from here. It is necessary that we should know and understand the nature and quality of the four elements in order to our being perfect in the principles and groundwork of our study in talismanic or magical art. Therefore, there are four elements, the original grounds of all... Let me zoom in a little bit, because the older I get, the more blind I become. Another reason why it's nice to look at PDFs on your computer. The original grounds of all corporeal things, fire, earth, water, and air, of which elements all inferior bodies are compounded, not by way of being heaped up together, but by transmutation and union, and when they are destroyed, they are resolved into elements. But there are none of the sensible elements that are pure, but they are more or less mixed and apt to be changed the one into the other, even as earth being moistened and dissolved becomes water. But the same being made thick and hard becomes earth again, and being evaporated through heat, it passes into air. So a lot of this stuff is just talking about the elements of change. Now this is interesting, and it reminds me of the wuxi. So in Chinese martial arts, they have a different type of 5 elements. They have metal, wood, earth, water, and fire. That's the 5 elements of China. And in particular martial arts forms, such as Xingyi, they have what's called the linking form, and they talk about the cycle of creation and destruction. Now, the interesting thing about the cycle of creation and destruction, so if we look at wuxia, let's do cycle of creation. There is a chart that shows, as you would imagine, a pentagram. Now, this goes into great detail, but you can kind of see a more generalization. But the idea here is each of the elements create each other. So when fire burns something, it becomes ash, which is then earth. From the earth, you get ore, which becomes metal. Metal can have water condense on it, right? Dew and stuff will condense on it into water. Water will nourish, and wood will grow. And then wood is burned to create fire. So that's the cycle of creation, one creating the other. The cycle of destruction is the pentagram star in the middle, because metal cuts wood. Wood uproots earth, so when the roots of a tree are growing, it splits up the earth. Earth will smother water. Water will extinguish fire, and fire will melt metal. So there's a cycle of creation, and cycle of creation and controlling cycle. When I was taught by my shifu, he taught it to me as the cycle of creation and the cycle of destruction. But I guess, according to this, it's controlling. So go with whatever one you want. But it just reminds me of that when I hear the elements and their association. Reminded me of the wuxia. I guess wuxia? Wuxia. So in Chinese pinyin, X pronounces like an English SH. So it would be wuxia. Moving on. Now, each of these elements have a threefold construction. I want to see if there's... I want to kind of glance through this kind of quicker, because I wanted to see if I can find and pick out something specific to using the elements. See, now it goes right into the next section. This book seems to talk real high level about philosophy, but not actual use of magic. And I know it's supposed to be volume 1 of 3. I don't think I've been able to find volume 2 or 3, so if anybody has links to those, definitely let me know. And if it's on Kindle, let me know. Like I said, I picked up this one on Kindle, so hopefully it saved my spot, so I don't have to... Yeah, cool, it did save my spot. So this is like where I left off in the Kindle version. Like I said, I'm only at about 14% of the book, so... Yeah, no, I'm not going to go back. I'm going to stay here. Thank you very much. Kindle Paperwhite. Definitely cool to read books on. I like to have my books at my fingertips. Even though I do like the paper books, and there's something nice about the paper books. In fact, I've been picking up some paper copies of a lot of the books, too. My latest acquisition has been the Magus, and the physical one has been Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, if you're interested in Druidry. But I won't pull that out right now. I keep getting distracted. I'm sorry. Mile a minute jumping around. Okay. Fire and earth, which are significant for the operation of all wonderful things. The former is active and the latter passive. Fire in all things and through all things comes and goes away bright. It is in all things bright. And so, yeah, this is not what I'm trying to look for. The properties of the internal fire are a parching heat, consuming all things, and darkness, making all things barren. So this is all like, so far, a lot of this stuff seems to be more of the theological aspect of understanding these. Do not speak of God without a light. So no mention of tools. So I guess nothing here really rings out as specific to some of the more arcane stuff that is practiced today. But I think a lot of this would be good underlining lessons to read anyway. So I'm definitely going to read it eventually. Would like to finish it. So many books to read. I was just curious if there was more specific associations with how you work with them, like if you're using air and you take herbs and cast them into the wind, or if you're working with fire, burning your herbs like incense, or if you're using candle magic and using the color of the wax and associating with the type of intent you're putting behind your spell. So I was curious if there was spell work like that in here with the elements, and so far, unless I'm just overlooking it because I'm reading too fast, so far I'm not seeing anything that stands out. I don't know. See, this one looks like it's starting to do a spell again. And it is well known, if in a dark place where there is no light there's no light, but by the coming in of a beam of the sun, somewhere through a little hole, a white paper or plain looking glass be set up against the light, that there may be seen upon them whatsoever things are done without, being shined upon by the sun. And there is another sleight or trick yet more wonderful, if anyone shall take images artificially painted or written letters, and in a clear night set them against the beam of the full moon, those resemblances being manipulated in the air and caught upwards and reflected back towards with the beam of the moon, another man that is privy to the thing at a long distance sees, reads, and knows them in the very compass and circle of the moon, which art of declaring secrets is indeed very profitable. So it sounds like they're basically writing hidden messages and revealing them with light. Maybe this is laying the foundation, since it is volume 1. It probably is. I was just kind of curious if there was something I could link up specifically today, since I haven't flipped through all these pages yet. I was watching a video on the Indo-European gods. It seems like the Norse and other European deities and Hindu deities trace back to those Indo-European gods, which that go against hard polytheism. I don't think so, because I think a lot of the polytheism stuff is so much of a modern reconstruction that people ignore what could have been. And I think a lot of the individuals that practice today are uneducated, myself included, because there's so much out there and so much has been lost and forgotten. So even though I'm trying to become educated by reading and studying and sharing with others when I do find stuff, I don't have it all written, I don't have it all memorized, and I don't know what to trust. Just because it's written down doesn't mean it's factual. So are there people that would be against that idea? Yes. Are there people that would be for that idea? Yes. Is that idea accurate? Who knows? I personally think that if it makes sense to you, go for it anyway. Because one of the things that has bothered me, like, and you see this like in some of the Celtic practices, right? I call it Celtic because that's the language group. It's a language group. It's not an actual people. There's a whole bunch of different tribes that were considered Celtic language-speaking tribes. But the region that referred to as Celtic, you talk about beings like the Tuatha Dé Danann. There's no creation story that has survived. So we don't know. So is it possible there's some other creation or connection with other deities or beings, or maybe there's a better or a higher, greater creator being? That's possible. In Norse spirituality, there is a creation story, though. So does that tie in with a hardcore believer in that creation story? It does not. According to their creation story, there are different realms, and two of those realms, the realm of fire and ice, Muspelheim, and I don't think it was Niflheim. Maybe it is Niflheim. Muspelheim and Niflheim, there's a great void called Gununga Gap, and when the two came together, part of Niflheim melted and water flowed, and the great gap was filled, and out of the ice came this cow who then licked out the first of the giants, Ymir, and out of Ymir's armpits came the race of the Jotnar, the giants and stuff. And Bor and Besla apparently had Odin, Vili, and Ve, and they killed Ymir and turned his body into Mithengarther, Earth, right? Midgard, Mithengarther. And so there's a creation story, and in that case, they're literally the first beings. And they created the earth, and they created the things on the earth. So that doesn't fall in with that. So I guess for those type of believers, and they believe that that story is true and not an allegory or a representation of something, and they think it's an actual fact, this is how the creation was done, I don't think that would work with that. Unless you twist it and modify it and say everything in that creation story is still true, and then it still ties back together for these European deities. Because there's also the thought that, and I've brought this up before, what if everybody's worshiping the same deity? So if you look at Slavic mysticism and paganism, they have a deity called Perun. Perun is usually seen with an axe in his hand, bearded, long-haired, and he's associated with lightning and thunder. And it's very possible that Perun is like a combination of Odin and Thor, or possibly is Thor. And then you have other people that have like the Germanic tribes, right? Which the Norse would be a breakoff of the Germanic tribes. They have Vodun. Vodun is basically Odin, and it's a different language, different culture, so it's possible that it's different. Since they were connected and related to each other, they probably are the exact same one. But then you look again into other stuff like some of the Greek or Roman stuff, then you have individuals like Zeus, who's associated with lightning and thunder as well. So you have a commonality amongst many of these faiths. What if it's all the same being? What if there's some sort of sky lightning deity that multiple different paths and people have come up with their own names for them, and they appeared in different forms? I don't know. I have no idea. I have no way of knowing. There is this theory in a lot of the North Scandinavian stuff that the deities, the Jotnar, the Aesir, and the Vanir, are primal representations of the forces of nature. Jotnar are the powers of chaos and destruction. The Aesir are the higher law and higher plane deities, law and order. And the Vanir are the forces of nature itself and of the people. So it's like, could it still apply to other stuff? Yeah, because it's all interpretations. But I think that's the problem with most religion or spirituality, is that we don't know and we don't have answers. We just kind of go with what feels right to us, right? Let's see. Of compound or mixed bodies, in what manner they relate to the elements, and how the elements relate to the souls, senses, and dispositions of men. So plants have such an affinity with air that unless they are out in it and receive its benefit, they neither flourish nor increase. So also animals, as the poet finely expressed it, have in their natures a most fiery force, and also spring from a celestial source. I like that. And fire is so natural to them that being extinguished, they soon die. Now amongst stones there are dark and heavy, are called earthy, those which are transparent to the watery element as crystals, beryl, and pearls, those which swim upon the water and are spongeous, as the pumice stone, sponge, and sophis, and are called airy, and those are attributed to the element of fire, out of which fire is extracted, or which are resolved into fire, as thunderstones, firestones, and asbestos. Also amongst metals, lead and silver are earthy quicksilver, is watery copper, tin, airy gold, and iron, fiery, and plants. Also the roots resemble earth, the leaves, water, flowers, the air. Yeah, so again, it's talking about how elements lie within each other, and I don't know, that's kind of neat because it's showing like the whole of the world and how the world works together, which again kind of fits more with the spirituality I try to look at. Our life exists and we're just trying to interpret what we see. Whatever is available at your current level of consciousness. Yeah. I don't know. Kind of went down on my little escapades here, checking some things out. Now I'm back to which part to jump to. I mean, at some point, I mean, I guess I could just read the whole book technically, but it would take a while, and we'd have to pick a section, right? Definitely some interesting chapters, though, and some reading here. The Secret of the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone again. Oh, so the Emerald Tablet has the Philosopher's Stone. And apparently there was a recipe book online that showed how to make it, and it was basically urine. So you would and I'm serious, you would pee in this bucket, and I forget what you're supposed to do elsewise, and you would have it calcify, and the calcified urine drying over and over again over years to make a Philosopher's Stone, supposedly is how the Philosopher's Stone was created. I'm serious. I did a video on it. There's some more videos on YouTube about it. Apparently they showed how to make a Philosopher's Stone, and a few people did, but then they never heard from them again. So it's like, did they get a working Philosopher's Stone? But apparently this calcified or whatever, your urine drying up and becoming a hard stone, ended up becoming it turns black. Like, I don't know if I would want to make or have that, but it's definitely interesting to think about and consider that someone actually put that together. It's page 48, huh? Now, here's some interesting lessons. I want to see what those are about in a second here, but I figured the Philosopher's Stone would be somewhere around here. Yeah, it's definitely something I want to make my way through. There's some really interesting stuff in here. Hermetic art. So here's the Hermetics yet again, even back in 1801. The process of making the great elixir. Yeah, here you go. Secret of the Philosopher's Stone. So that's the section I was looking for. By which base metals may be turned into pure gold, containing the most excellent and profitable instructions in the Hermetic order. Discovering that valuable and secret medicine of the Philosopher's Stone. Wonder if this shows how it's supposed to be done. With the grace of God. Guess here's some individuals again who had written down some stuff. The Zoroaster was the father of alchemy, illuminated divinely from above. He knew everything, yet seemed to know nothing. His perceptions of art were left in hieroglyphics, yet in such sort that none but the favorites of heaven ever reaped benefit thereby. He was the first to engrave the pure Kabbalah in most pure gold, and when he died, resigned it to his Father who liveth eternally, yet begot him not. That Father gives it to his sons, who follow the precepts of wisdom with vigilance, ingenuity, and industry, and with a pure, chaste, and free mind. Hermes Trismestus, Gerber, Artephius, Bacon, Helmont, Lully, and Basil Valentine have written most profoundly yet abstrusively, and all declare not the thing sought for. Some say they were forbidden, others that they declared it obviously and intelligibly, yet some few little points they keep to themselves. However, far off the main point, they let us of this be sure, that something valuable is to be drained, as if it were out of each other. But Flamel is best of all. Yeah, I still don't know if this Kabbalah is supposed to be like the Jewish mysticism Kabbalah or not. I think it is. Could be wrong. Definitely some interesting stuff found throughout here. One of these things had these lessons. I want to see what these lessons are, and we'll probably wrap up the live because I think this has gone on long enough. But I'm hoping this inspires y'all to start reading and looking and seeing some of the weird things that are out there. Of the preparation of a man to qualify him for the search of this treasure, and of the first matter of the stone. The preparation for this work is simply this: learn to cast away from thee all vile affections, all levity and inconsistencies of mind. Let all thy dealings be free from deceit and hypocrisy. Avoid the company of vain young men. Hate all profligacy and profane speaking. Keep thine own and thy neighbor's secrets. Court not the favors of the rich. Despise not the poor. For this just seems like lessons and advice. Not like it's not worth reading, but Interesting. Definitely an interesting book. But anyway, that was the book that I wanted to bring up for talking about today, was the Magus. It's the one that I had started reading about, and I thought it was very interesting to hear how he spoke about magic and mysticism and the associations that Francis Barrett tied in with God. Just because most of the Christians I know seem to put down magic and talk about how bad it is, but here we have a Christian that's collecting occult knowledge and putting it together. And if you look at some of the source of the occult knowledge, most of it seems philosophy-based, science-based, or generalized spirituality-based. And it seems like a repeat of many of the things that we see in some of the modern texts of revival, New Age neo-occultism. So that brings up the question, where do we draw the line between science and magic? And do we really need to make sure that the source is quote-unquote pagan in nature? Can we just look at any source out there that talks about spirituality? Which brings me back to my biggest point of just do you. Observe nature, find your own way of working with it, and let it be. We don't need to get caught up into the great details, but it's still interesting to hear another person's thoughts from hundreds of years ago. 1800, that's over 200 years ago. Over 200 years ago, someone was writing about some stuff like this. And now we get it past us because of the power of the written word. I've actually had the argument before with some quote-unquote self-proclaimed Norse pagans. And I've told them the runes are not magic. They're a writing system. It's letters. And they're like, no, it's not. It's magic. They used it for this, that, and whatever else. Prove it. Where's your evidence? One person actually said to me, well, Odin would not have hung himself from a tree just to learn how to write. Why not? Writing is power. Writing is very powerful. Odin sacrificed himself to himself by hanging himself from the branches of Yggdrasil, and he wrote the runes into the trunk of the tree, and he had the runes. If you go back to old Scandinavia, stories were passed by word of mouth by skalds. They were basically poets. They didn't start writing them down until Snorri Sturluson wrote them down in the 1200s, 200 years after the end of the Viking era, when the last Scandinavian country, Sweden, converted to Christianity. You can't tell me that words are not power. I don't believe it. I think words are very much power. Very powerful. So I do believe that someone would try to do that to gain knowledge and wisdom and learn written word. I think that's super powerful. That's kind of what I've been considering, that maybe there is a common deity of, say, thunder, and different cultures just view it differently. Greeks see it as Zeus, Norse see it as Thor. Spiritual discernment. I have no answers. I just have questions, and I figure if we keep sharing ideas that we'd inspire each other. Symbols and storytelling, yes. Stories are powerful. Stories have taught people and learned lessons left and right. But again, I pose the question regularly, and I'll pose the question again. What makes these people that came up with these religions or wrote this stuff down so special? Why can they learn and tap into the divine and you can't? Why can you not observe? If whatever beings you believe in, whether it's a single god, multiple gods, or just a spirit, or just nature itself, or maybe you don't know, whatever's out there that you believe in, if it's that powerful, why can't you hear its voice? But then you start talking about what separates someone from actually hearing a voice and being psychotic. You know, if someone says, oh, God came to me and spoke to me, people think they're crazy. But you were believing people who said this and wrote down words. Even with the spirituality and stuff like that, right? These stories, if you talk about Norse paganism, the poems, right? The sagas and Eddas, they learned them from somewhere. So if the first person learned this from witnessing the gods, so what separates them that wrote these sagas and stories down or passed them by word of mouth to be written down by someone? What's different from them and someone today claiming that they're hearing the gods speak to them? Think about how you would treat someone today that swears up and down some sort of a divine source spoke with them, and if you think they're crazy or not. You've heard of Thelema, the Book of the Law? Oof. Okay, that was a mistake. I need to clean my books off. Whew. I got a big library. The Book of the Law. Liberal vel legis. I don't know how to pronounce that. Aleister Crowley. Yeah. Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley. I don't know how to say his name. This book, he claims, the Egyptian deity Thoth, the one who writes, this is pictures of his handwriting, of Crowley's handwriting, that he wrote down because a god, an Egyptian god, spoke to him. Alex Sanders, who started Alexandrian Wicca, claims that Kernina spoke to him and told him the proper way to say his name, which is Karnena, according to one individual that I speak with here on YouTube. So why is Alex Sanders not crazy or Crowley not crazy? Or maybe you do think they're crazy. Maybe you think it's crazy that God spoke with them. Well, then if you have a faith, where did you learn that faith from? And who wrote it down originally? Because there is no difference in my mind from Crowley claiming that an Egyptian god spoke to him, or Alex claiming that a Celtic god spoke to him, or some random person saying a god is speaking to them versus someone in the ancient past making that same claim. What is the difference? That's what I ask you. If you have an answer for me, let me know. But as far as I'm concerned, I feel like we all have that inner voice inside of us, our conscience. I think that's the voice of whatever god or gods that may be out there. If they exist, that inner voice is that voice. So I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think they speak with us like I'm speaking to you. I think there's a different way they speak to us. And that divine inspiration can be misinterpreted, and it can evolve over time with our understanding, which is why when I say you take any text that you're learning from, any text that you're trying to research or you're trying to read or you're trying to understand, and you ask yourself, what is it that inspired them to write it this way? Take inspiration out of it, but figure it out for yourself. Because maybe they didn't know what they were doing and they put it to pen. Maybe these people had divine inspiration. Maybe they did. But who said they wrote it down right? Who says that their understanding at the time was enough to capture divinity? How can we say divinity can be captured in the written word of mankind? I just don't, to me it doesn't make sense. Do you think that all pantheons of gods could have been more advanced ETs? I've heard that theory before. And although it makes sense that it's a possibility, no, I don't. I don't think it's impossible, but I personally don't believe that. In fact, that's one of the inspirations for the fictional world in Marvel. They did Stan Lee did a what if the Norse gods were in fact aliens. That was the whole premise for his comic version of them, that they were these advanced beings and they came down to Earth and people viewed them as actual gods versus being alien beings. And they're not the only ones. People have theorized before that the ancient pyramids and stuff in Egypt was created by aliens as well. And there are stories about Atlantis and all these other types of ancient civilizations, Babylonia and whatnot, where supposedly knowledge had come from the stars. I mean, who's to know what created us or how it was created, or if it cares, or if it's conscious? There's so many possibilities. It's all blind faith. There is no difference. We all can tap into our higher selves and other forms of consciousness. Yes, I agree with you. Coming from their level of consciousness and perception. I think there's a fine line, though, when we start seeking this out and trying to look for divine inspiration. Are we getting actual inspiration, or are we crazy? At what point is it hearing voices versus feeling spiritual? Like, where do we draw that line, too, between sanity and enlightenment? Depends on definition of alien. Anything not born on Earth would be alien. This is true. Technically speaking, too, we even use the term alien to apply to foreigners. If you're not born on that soil or that country, you're an alien. So it's like, yeah, alien just means foreign, unknown objects. So in some ways, alien fits, period. But I think specifically, if I'm understanding the Dusty Dud, I believe you were referring to the idea of a living civilization that lives on another planet that came here versus an ethereal being from another realm or a higher realm that had manifested our creation, I assume is what you were referring to. it would be alignment versus fear or some lower vibration. Yeah, I could see that. All right. On that note, thank you all for coming and hanging out. I greatly appreciate you participating with the lives. Hope you learned something. As always, these goes on my YouTube channel. I'm trying to make more videos and more shorts. But keep the conversation going. Keep asking the questions, and I'll see you in future ones. Do aliens need to have a physical body? That's actually a valid point, too. I don't know. I guess not. What's wrong with having beings of light? What if they travel a different realm of existence? Are they still considered aliens or whatnot? The very core of what is questioned on a regular basis, right? Like, what are we? Are we these physical beings? What if we ourselves are some sort of being of light or energy, and we are driving these physical bodies for a temporary time period, and we're part of some other plane of existence? There's so much what ifs out there that it's hard to wrap your head around all the possibilities. Are we like computers? Is the self, the consciousness, does it cease to exist when we die? How do we know? We try to tell ourselves we continue on for comfort, but how do we know? We don't. Personal definitions, right? Yeah, definitely some crazy stuff out there. But anyway, like I said, I do need to wrap up the stream. I've been streaming for about an hour. I don't want to keep doing 2 to 3 hour streams due to time constraints. But let me wrap this one up for today. That's trippy, right? Versus collective definitions, indeed. I do have a Discord. You're welcome to join. I don't know if it's still going to be active by the time. If you see this in the future, if you're watching this live in the future, I don't know if I'll still have an active Discord then. But at the moment, I still have an active Discord. So if you want to jump in there and chat, feel free. We got some channels dedicated to polytheism. Conversations and interpretations are always welcome. But I am definitely going to end the live here, and I will catch y'all in the next one.